do I really love what I'm doing, and am I actually excited for what I'm about to do? And if that answer is yes, then I know I'm in the right place. So I think that's how I've touched back on my high school days is, it's okay to be nervous, but just make sure you love what you're doing and make sure you're excited about it in general.
That was Angelina Napoleon today on the Running Effect podcast, fresh off of making her first ever U.S. team. And guys, I can almost assure you, I feel very confident in this statement. It's going to be the first of many teams that she makes. She's kind of come out of nowhere, and she addresses that breakthrough in today's conversation. Last year at the U.S. Championships, which was the Olympic trials, she sat at home watching, and a year later, she places second in the entire country. She's run some remarkable times, as she talks about in this conversation. A big goal of hers is to break 9 minutes in the steeplechase. She would be the second ever female to do that from the United States of America. She runs for NC State, where she has placed high at NCAA championships, including this past one in the steeplechase. And she's got a good head on her shoulder. She gives a lot of deep wisdom and insights into her career and the blueprint for breakthrough, the blueprint for success if you want a lot out of this sport. If you enjoy this one, share it with everyone you know. Word of mouth marketing is the best and easiest way in which we can grow. Give us a 5-star review. It takes 3 to 5 seconds to do, and then hit the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss more episodes like this one in the future. Without further ado, enjoy this conversation with newest Team USA member Angelina Napoleon. Angelina Napoleon, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. Fresh off of making your first U.S. team, how are you feeling?
Exactly like how I said, like speechless and kind of like on top of the world right now. Really excited and, can't wait to see where this takes me. So super excited. Yeah.
I'm a deep fan of the sport. I cover the sport, at least in some capacity with the podcast. And I can't say I really knew your name until this past spring. Where have you been?
Yeah.
And what's behind the breakout?
Yeah. I think in general, freshman year getting into the NCAA, I think is tough. I preach this a lot to girls on my team, just coming in, or in general, just coming from high school where it's a little more easy to dominate and, gain a lot of confidence from smaller races. When you go into the NCAA your freshman year, you can feel a little lost. And I think I definitely felt that a little bit. And I think it definitely takes a year to kind of get your feet under you again. And, uh, going into cross country my sophomore year, I had a goal to get back in shape and get to where I wanted to be and where, get my fitness back to make the goals that I wanted to achieve. And I think the pathway for me was through steeple, and I think it always has been. So I think it's nice to find that niche. And, once I hit outdoor track, that's kind of, I ran rally relays and surprised myself there. And I think after that, you get on a roll and it kind of just manifests itself. So.
Where did you watch the Olympic trials last year? And if I would have gone back to you and that version of yourself and say, you're going to make the team next year, what would you have thought?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So, last year at the Olympic trials, uh, I was watching. I was watching from my house. Not there. I was the last person to not make the Olympic trials. Actually, I just barely missed. Got the cut, and I talked with Coach Hennis a lot before that. We tried everything to get me in to the Olympic trials. I tried racing at Portland Track Festival, and I ended up not having a good race. I even tried to qualify through doing U20s at that race, and I still didn't hit the time. So that kind of, took a blow to my confidence. And, I knew that's not the athlete I wanted to be. But, yeah, I don't think that definitely if you told me last year I would be where I am today, I wouldn't believe you. But I don't even think I would believe you if you told me that after ACCs this year. I was ecstatic with my ACC performance just a few months ago, and that was about like a 9:20 something performance. And I don't think I would have believed you if you would have told me I was going to run a 9:10, let alone make the team. Steeplechase this year has been super stacked. I can't stress that enough. Uh, I think that's the biggest thing coming off of making the world team is I can't wrap my head around the fact that the race was just so stacked uh, with so many talented women. I was thinking to myself on Thursday night after the semifinal, I'm just laying in bed and my heart's just like beating out of my chest. Uh, because there's a million different ways that race could have been run and uh, a million different outcomes if you would have run it, an hour later. So I guess that kind of, just puts it into perspective, I guess, a little bit.
What do you think you needed to do between ACCs, NCAAs to USAs to give you the confidence when you stood on the starting line this past Saturday to think that you could make the team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think coach and I had tried to take it in like 6 week blocks basically. So, coming off of ACCs, I had some good confidence. Like I said, I think I was lucky and fortunate to have forward momentum throughout the season with steeplechase, and I also ran a 5K. I also ran some 1500s. So I also had those in my back pocket to kind of lean on, like, oh, I can close, because I've run this in the 1500, or, I have the endurance because I've run this in the 5K. So I think the preparation was a lot different in each quote unquote like 6 week block that I took. Uh, and I was thinking about this too. I think that's what's so impressive. Um, I'm straying away from the question just a little bit, but
No, go for it.
I think that's what's a little impressive about a lot of the collegiate athletes that have made the world team this year is the fact that we trained so hard towards NCAAs, and at least I peaked for NCAAs. That was the main goal. I wasn't thinking about U.S. championships because that's not the goal when you're in college. The goal is to run well at NCAAs, and that's where you're going to show up and show out. So I was peaking for that specific race, and I think it's really impressive that, I'm assuming that a lot of the collegiate athletes like myself didn't really take too much time off and kind of rolled right into that next training block. And not only maintained their fitness through that last 6 weeks, but also peaked again and performed at the highest level again. So I think that's what I know that was satisfying for me, was to know that, I could keep my head on straight after such a long season from March to June and peak through there, and then kind of continue that out and roll right back into getting into US champs. And I mean the training, what was necessary for me was to get in. I definitely wanted like fitness and workout wise, I like doing like at least a solid like two good steeple workouts with hurdles to make me feel good. One of my confidence boost kind of workouts that I did before NCAAs and before US champs. I honestly can't remember the whole workout, but I know the one rep that gives me a lot of confidence is we would run a 1200 over hurdles, and I would always kind of surprise myself with how I could handle the stress of, getting tired and feeling fatigued, but trying to push through, the last lap. And, um, that always kind of boosted my confidence of, if I can do this in a workout by myself, I can definitely do it in a race and be prepared in that sense. So,
Yeah, it's amazing. For you, how much of the difference was physical versus mental, would you say, in terms of the last 6 months?
yeah, I would say. I would say it definitely goes into both. I changed up my training a little bit. Um, and I think that definitely boosts your physical. I mean, I think ultimately just calling a spade, like if you're physically fit, you're mentally going to be where you need to be. I think it's a lot harder to uh not be as physically fit and try to then it is harder to pull your mental back into the same space. And I talked to Coach Hennis about that before U.S. champs. Um, I was fortunate enough to have a good lead up to NCAAs and to U.S. champs, and I think that that not only played into having a good mentality, but not everybody. If you have that physical confidence, then there's no reason you can't have that mental confidence. And I think it is definitely mental. I mean, I can't say that I didn't, sit down with coach and be like, oh, like, do we think we did enough? Have I trained hard enough? But at the end of the day, uh, if I trust my coach enough that if she's telling me I'm fit, then it doesn't really matter what I think and how I'm getting on the line. I just have to lace up my spikes, show up on the line, and just run as hard as I can because I know I'm fit. So I think that was the biggest thing going into both of those races, specifically U.S. champs, because I hadn't raced in 6 weeks. So I didn't know where I was. So, carrying that confidence of I've had good workouts, I've been consistent, and I've been by myself. I went home to New York and I trained because I thought it was important to be with my family and my friends, the people that are just closest to me. Uh, they really keep me stable. And, I think uh, being able to have had consistent, good training while I was by myself in New York definitely gave me the confidence to, uh, be able to show up and not be scared of anything that was going to happen. So,
One of my favorite kind of quotes and ideas is that confidence comes from preparation, confidence comes from the work itself. I
yeah.
want to ask you a question that's kind of an offshoot of that. What are things outside of like the workouts or the like strict training itself, the runs that you gain
Yeah.
confidence from that you feel like you define as preparation?
Yeah. I would say like the first thing would definitely be like, are you talking like not like physically at all, like not
It could be
training?
physically. Yeah, it could be like in the
Okay,
gym or how you
I was
eat
gonna say,
or
I
yeah.
feel like, yeah, I would say the two things that really gave me a lot of confidence were uh my lifts in the gym. Uh it's not even about, I'd be PRing by this or I don't really do that, but it's just how fast can I move the weight and how good does it feel, and if I'm not walking out as sore, or if I push myself an extra rep that I didn't know I had. I think one of the biggest things that gives me confidence, which is like kind of like has nothing to do with like running, I guess, but like I started getting a lot stronger uh in like controlling my own body weight, which is something I've never really been able to do. Like for example, like I always struggle, and I'm gonna give myself the benefit of the doubt. I am tall, so I think that pull ups have always been really hard for me, but I've really worked on them, and I've gotten to like I've been able to do sets of pull-ups and like all the way down, all the way up, and that is like a huge win for me because that's something that I never was able to do. And I think that, as much as it's just like, oh, it's just doing a pull-up, like what is that going to help you with steeple? It's cool because it means that I'm all full body, I'm getting stronger and I'm getting tougher. Um Another thing that I think plays a huge role is just the nutrition aspect. I think this goes all the way back to my freshman year. Uh, like I said, getting into college and, um, you're not eating the same foods you used to in high school, and you're not in the same routine. And I think that that kind of threw me off. Being young and kind of being naive and not really knowing my body and my body type. So I kind of definitely switched that up going into my sophomore year, and I started cooking a lot for myself. That's another thing I'm really proud of. I really took a hold of my nutrition, and I taught myself how to cook. Uh, and I think that has just given me a lot of control in the sense of I can be as consistent with my nutrition as I can my training. And it makes me feel confident because I know that anytime, if I'm stressed out about, whatever, like staying fit, I know that I can date back and say, like, I ate X, Y, and Z and I trained exactly like this. And that's the recipe. So I guess it's kind of satisfying because I taught myself the recipe of how to, you know, get to an elite level. And it's satisfying for me because anytime I need to recreate that, I know I can, uh, because it's almost textbook. So that was definitely huge for me outside of the running aspect. Overall nutrition and lifts and stuff like that. So
What's the blueprint for someone out there listening? You've completely reinvented yourself, even if you're still the same person from the
yeah,
outside over the last year, from at home watching one spot out to not just making the final, not just making the meet, but making the team.
yeah,
And we're in August, which is a cool time. You're actually with your team at kind of like a team camp. I think a lot of people are in similar situations where it's a time of year where you're stacking miles, your body's a little tired, but if training's going well, you feel really confident you can have a breakout like cross country season.
for
Between
sure.
now, August, November, or December, if you're a high school athlete running NXN, what's the blueprint? How do you kind of do things you didn't think were possible like you have?
Yeah, I think, obviously I everybody says this, everybody's different. My blueprint's going to look a lot different from everybody else's, but something I guess that I can kind of generalize that I did is I stopped I personally took myself out of situations that were draining my energy. Um and I think in this sense, people can think you're being a little selfish or like not wanting to be around people. For me personally, I am a very independent person, and I think something that I lost my freshman year that helped me grow my sophomore year was that I wasn't prioritizing my alone time and my time to reflect on what I was doing in my own training. I think that I gave of myself a lot to, just stuff that drained my energy that didn't need to. Um, and going into my sophomore year, I really like took a hard look in the mirror and I was like, I I have large goals, and if you need to kind of shift your focus and remove yourself from situations to get yourself on the right path, I think that's really important. Um and if that's prioritizing your alone time, or I think it's important to hang out with your team and be with people, but also if going to if you're tired and going to a team event is going to drain your energy, then it's not necessary to go. I think that's where you do have to prioritize yourself, and you do have to be a little bit selfish. This sport's not for the weak, and I think that if if you need to if you have a hard workout in the morning, and everybody else, even being home for the summer, uh people want to go out and sit by the bonfire for 3 hours, and I have to wake up in the morning and work out. I wouldn't even call it a sacrifice because it's something I love to do, but that's a quote unquote sacrifice you'd have to make to prioritize your training. But back to the original question of like the blueprint, I
Mhm.
think it's also important to not compare yourself to others too. uh I think that was like, as much as this isn't like a physical blueprint of like what I did training wise, these little mental tricks are what got me on track physically. I think like I said, if your mind's clear and you're in a positive space, the physical is going to come naturally. It's not about what you're how you're training, if you're doing double threshold or if you're doing easy run or whatever. um, I think if you can show up to practice every day and you have a smile on your face uh, because you actually enjoy the sport, I think that's what's important. And I think one of the main things that helped me was um, not comparing yourself to others, because everybody's path is different. And like I said, that's so I know people say that a lot and it's a lot easier said than done. um I I'm human. I know people's times. I know what other people do, and it can affect you. But at the end of the day, I I think that if you're confident that you're going to achieve the goals you want to achieve, it doesn't matter when you do it, and it doesn't matter what other people are doing, because you know you're going to get there. Um, Again, that was a huge thing that carried me through my sophomore year. People are always running fast and always doing well, but I tried to keep myself as laser focused on what I was doing, because I knew I was going to get there. It just might take me a little longer than some other people. And I think that's the ultimate, you know, uh, thought process behind really achieving and being your best self.
Something you spoke to a little while ago that I really want to dive into is a concept I talk about all the time. So I appreciate you bringing it up. I say the best of the best people, like the difference between the people who listen to this podcast and want to get better and people like yourself are the people who listen to this podcast know the sacrifices they have to make, but they view them as sacrifices. And so they carry this tension in their head that they're making these sacrifices. And it gets really exhausting when you're thinking about
Yeah.
all the time, all the sacrifices you have to make. You said something which I loved. And I always say the best of the best don't view sacrifices as sacrifices. Can you dive a little deeper into that and why you don't view objective sacrifices as sacrifices?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I would never consider it a sacrifice if it's something I'm choosing to do. And at the end of the day, all the hard work, I say this all the time, but all the hard work, all the pain, um, all the all the blood, sweat, and tears, it's all worth it when you cross that line and you achieve your goal. I would do it over again in a heartbeat. I don't show up every day to practice and am so amped to like go for a run or do a workout, but I know that what I'm doing is worth it in the long run and is going to give me the ultimate satisfaction. Uh, and yeah, and I never view it as a sacrifice, because like I said, it gives me so much satisfaction. Um, I've never I've never finished a run, I've never finished a workout and said, "Oh my god, that wasn't worth it." Like, I don't feel good. Even if it wasn't good, I know that I put my all out there, and you feel satisfied off of that. You feel satisfied that you're showing up for yourself. You're not showing up for anybody, you're showing up for yourself, and you're showing yourself that you can work hard and that um you can achieve what you want to achieve. And I think that's the ultimate goal of also surrounding yourself with people that are understanding of your schedule. uh I think that's also important, is if you're surrounding yourself with people who also view what you're doing as you're missing out, and they're giving you FOMO. I think that that's also really hard. And I'm really lucky. I've had a great support system. I've talked about this a bunch, but um my mom and my dad, they go to the absolute most they do the absolute most for me to achieve what I want to achieve. I just think of uh 4th of July this year. My whole family went up to the lake house, and um my dad loves to water ski, and all he wanted to do on the 4th of July was get up in the morning and water ski. And he I had a workout, and he opted to sacrifice, quote unquote, sacrifice what he wanted to do to bike with me and ensure that I had a good workout. Uh, and that's just an example of having a good support system. But, when you have people around you like that, uh, want you to achieve your goals, and they understand how tough it can be to miss out on family events, or to miss out, on the fun things to achieve the ultimate goal. It makes it easier because they're kind of in it with you, so you don't feel as lonely. So I think that's ultimately also a huge piece of advice, is surround yourself with people that have your back, but also, you know want to see you perform well, but also like have good goals like that too. um my family and my friends, uh they would do anything for me to achieve my goals, and it shows. And I'm forever grateful, and I have a lot of gratitude for them. So
How important to you is the coach athlete trust relationship, specifically when you look back at the list of studs that have come through NC State in the past 5 years? You seem like the next one up. How exciting is that to you? And what's your relationship like with Coach Hennis, specifically those 6 weeks between NCAAs and USAs, where I'm sure she's trying to instill in you the belief of like, look, I believe you can do this.
hmm yeah, it's really interesting because, um yeah, you definitely feel the bond grow as you get deeper into the season, and as you get into more competitive races. uh you know Coach has always been very supportive of my goals and what I want to achieve, just like she's supportive of all the girls on my team. I mean, it's really impressive how she gives the same amount of energy to every single girl on our team. I think that's really impressive. But ultimately, it's tough, especially going into U.S. championships. She's coaching me from far away, so she doesn't get to. I mean, I can tell her like, oh, this felt good. Oh, this is what I did. But at the end of the day, she's not there. She's not actually seeing what I'm doing, and she doesn't know if I'm telling the truth or not. So going into that trust aspect, I think it is very important to, um, you know, I have had to open up to her a little bit more. Sometimes as the athlete, you never want to show weakness. We've grown up like that. I remember being a kid, and like you're in youth basketball, and my dad would be like, "You're not going for a water break. Like, you stay on the court. Like, that shows that you're tough. Like, you don't show weakness in front of the coach because you want to play, or you want to run, or you want to be the first one. In the relay or whatever." Um, so I think like that's something that I've learned and I've had to grow as an athlete, is it is okay to share some of your fears and some of your doubts. um if something could be going right, but mentally I could still be doubting myself. And sometimes, um being able to actually trust coach enough that she's not gonna pull me from a workout or cut my reps just because I'm feeling a little off, um, and trusting the fact that she's just gonna help me get through those moments, was definitely hard for me, because I've always been an athlete where I'm never gonna show weakness. I'm never gonna tell somebody that I'm struggling, because it looks weak to me. So that's something I've had to learn, is if I do have a little bit of doubt and I share that with her, it actually helps, because then sometimes she can just be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, she can kind of call out the crazy, because being an elite athlete, I think I can vow for almost everybody in the NCAA, and probably a lot of people who are pro athletes. You always are doubting yourself. You're always like, "Am I fit enough? Did I do enough?" And sometimes you just need someone to say, "Yeah, you have done enough, and you are fit, and you're just overthinking it." So that trust has definitely built, uh, especially the last 6 weeks, training from afar, because I have had to be very honest with Coach Hennis, and tell her when I have doubts, and tell her when I'm feeling good, and when I'm ready to take on the world. So, you know, um, yeah, that's definitely, I would say, our relationship has definitely built, and I'm very grateful for that. So
What were the emotions of making the team, seeing her? What was that first interaction like?
yeah, that was a feeling that I could just like, it lives rent free in my head. You know, uh, there's a few people that there's a few people I'd really want to see after my race, and that's my parents and coach. And I wouldn't call coach like Coach Hennis. I don't think she hugs a lot of people. At least like I haven't ever. She's not a super like hug type of person. So like seeing her after the race and like just giving her the biggest hug and just knowing that we made it through together and we actually achieved what we said we were going to achieve. I think I'm smiling talking about it because there's just no other feeling like that than making somebody proud. And like I said, you talk a lot of talk, but it's different to actually achieve it, and not only achieve it, but show to somebody that you really look up to, that you can do it, and somebody that has been through the whole process with you. I think that's really important. The fact that I got to see coach and just like give her a hug and just say like we did it. Like this is it actually happened. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Going back to your high school years, and I should pull up a list of accolades, although I think we'd be here all day if I read them, but bear with me here. In high school,
No, you're good.
you were a World U20 medalist. If I just remember you were like a stud in high school. I think you set the national record, or you came close in the steeplechase. You can speak to your
Yeah.
accolades and accomplishments, but you got
Yeah.
it done in those stages where you would normally feel pressure. Do you feel like that helped you then when you came to the NCAA and even in a U.S. championship sort of race where a high schooler, like when you go to a national meet, it's like the end all be all. Your whole world
Oh
rests
yeah.
on it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
How
for
much do you
sure.
think that helped you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something that I really did like reach back into going into NCAAs. Uh you know, that yeah, that pressure never leaves, whether it's a dual meet in high school or whether you're standing at the US championships. You're always nervous, you're always feel pressure no matter who you are in the race. So yeah, I definitely touched on those experiences. Uh you know, uh in high school, I ran New Balance Nationals for steeple was my event in high school, and yeah, I always felt pressure, but I think ultimately I was always excited, and that's something that I've revisited this year, especially is it's completely normal and it's okay to be nervous and antsy on the line, but ultimately you have to love what you're doing. And I mean, people have said, because I've been like, I try to smile as best I can, through my races and through getting ready process. And that's to keep myself in check of, do I really love what I'm doing, and am I actually excited for what I'm about to do? And if that answer is yes, then I know I'm in the right place. So I think that's how I've touched back on my high school days is, it's okay to be nervous, but just make sure you love what you're doing and make sure you're excited about it in general. So
Looking back on your high school career, what's one moment that you have the most pride on when you look back on it? And take me through your love story with the sport of running. When do you feel like you really fell in love with it?
yeah, to answer the first question, I would say, and I didn't even realize it. Sometimes when you finally get out of uh where you were at, like when I finally graduated high school, um looking back, I then understand things that I can be proud of. It was a little hard for me in high school to actually understand what was happening all the time, but I would say one of the most proud moments was, I would say, when I won, when I was awarded Gatorade overall player of the year for track and field. Just again, because I know how many people I graduated with that were so talented and so deserving of that award. So to kind of represent all of track and field and represent them as well, I think definitely gave me a lot of satisfaction rounding out my high school career in general. And then kind of how I got into running, I started in modified. I always, in elementary school, I was the kid that, you know, I'm prepared for the mile run or whatever. I was in like third, fifth grade, and I'm like, the period before gym, my heart's beating out of my chest. I'm like, I need to run this fast. So I always think running was kind of built for me, but I never really started taking it seriously until I was a sophomore in high school. And even then, I was kind of only really competitive locally. Uh, I would say when I really started to take off was my junior year. I started seeing some leaps in uh, steeple and in the 800, and that kind of rolled into my senior year. And like I said, when you have forward momentum and you're doing well, it's hard not to love what you're doing. When you set goals and you're achieving them, it feels good. uh, it always feels good to achieve your goals, and I think that is really what grew my passion even more for running, was when I started saying, I don't know if that's possible, and then actually kind of doing my impossible. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, that's what really grew my passion and grew my love for running in general.
U.S. women's steeple has kind of historically been dominant on the world stage, of Emma Coburn winning the world championships,
Of
Courtney
course.
Frerichs placing second at the Olympics, Courtney breaking 9 minutes. And it's sad as a fan of the sport and someone who watched both those races to not see either of them line up this past year, but it
Yeah.
does kind of signal this new era. And I think when people see a 20-year-old, if I'm not mistaken, making
Yeah.
a team and running 9:10, naturally they're going to think this is the future of our sport in this event. Without the pressure there, because I don't think there needs to be pressure there, is there excitement around the thought of being that person that people thought was Emma or was Courtney? And, in 10 years, it could be like, oh, it's Angelina Napoleon. Like, that's who the next generation looks up to.
Yeah, it is really cool to think that, um, people would even like look up to me as a role model or anything like that, because I still look up to all of those women, and I don't think they're done yet. People can say that we're the future, and I'm really appreciative of that, and I do think we are the future, but I don't think that we're gonna see the end of um, any of those women you just named off. You know, they're super competitive, and you can't run a 9:05 or whatever and think that they're not going to come back and do it again. If you can do it once, you can do it again. And uh, I'm really excited for the growth of the steeple. As I stated previously, I think it's just growing, and it's such a stacked field that obviously we have younger people entering, like myself, like Lexi Holiday Lowry, or even Kaylee Mitchell, the women I made it with. Obviously we're young, but I think that it's a testament to the longevity of the steeple, and how you can continue to be good and progress for a long time in this like niche event. So I think that that's really cool, and I'm really excited for those women to come back, and I can't wait to toe the line with them soon. So yeah.
Looking ahead to Tokyo, what is the next? How far out are we? 5-6 weeks. What does it look like for
Yeah.
you? What's the excitement? What's the blueprint for these next 5-6 weeks? Level up again.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said before, it's satisfying because I do have, a 6 week block that I'm probably gonna recycle a little bit. We might change up some things. Uh Obviously, I want to be in the best shape of my life going into Tokyo. And, to get there, we might have to, switch a few things and, make a few adjustments to some times, but otherwise, I've I've done a 6 week block already and it's gotten me back to a 9-10. So, if I can make another 6 week block uh look that good again and shave a few seconds off, I'll be pretty satisfied with that. So, yeah.
How do you mentally stay fresh or try to stay fresh when you've been racing for I don't even want to know how many months and you're racing
Yeah.
people who have peaked? The World Championships
Yep.
has always been on their schedule. In January, it probably wasn't on yours. Or at least you don't
Yeah.
train if you're in the NCAA like it. Like the NCAA is your World Championships, even if you're at the
Right.
World Championships. I talked to Ethan Strand yesterday who knew he was going to go pro, and he still said we peaked for NCAAs.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. I think I'm remembering that correctly. So how do you go about that personally?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is tough to keep yourself, you know, mentally locked in for, a 12 weeks essentially. We're doing hard training, you're pushing yourself. Uh, but ultimately, like I said before, going right back into you have to be enjoying what you're doing. I think if you're showing up at practice every day and you're doing it for the wrong reasons, then you're not going to make it through. I showed up every single day of my 6 week block after NCAAs, and I had a why was I doing that? The why was I want to make it to Tokyo. Um, and I think that being able to lean on that uh, was huge for me. And I talked about this actually in a different interview, but uh, after NCAAs, it was hard for me to get back into training initially, like that first like week or two, because my quote unquote why I was training for 6 weeks was NCAAs and was to achieve the goals that I achieved at NCAAs and at Paris. Um, so that was hard coming off of that because I wasn't quite ready to move on from that because I had been training so hard from January to June for that one race, and then it's kind of over and you're just like, wait, I just have to roll right into the next goal. Like I don't even get to really appreciate it. Like I don't even get a break. I'm just kind of rolling right into it. So I think the most important thing for me post NCAAs and post Paris was to change my why why I was training to a feeling instead of a goal. So I wanted so badly to feel that feeling again, that's what carried me through the start of my training of US championships until I was ready enough to make US championships my next goal. So I really rode out my NCAA high for like that first 2 weeks of training. And when I'd show up to practice or something and um I wasn't feeling as motivated, I'd say like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because it felt so good to cross that line at NCAAs and I want to feel that again. And so I rode that feeling out for a little bit until I was prepared to say, what's my why now? I want to make Tokyo. Um so yeah, I would say that was kind of the mental war I went on with for like the 2 weeks post NCAAs. But I've done it before, and I can do it again. So yeah,
It's the mindset to have. What would you consider and deem success coming out of Tokyo? What does success look like for you at the World Championships?
yeah. Again, I really haven't had a a huge opportunity to actually sit down and think of my goals. Again, I'm kind of using this next 2 weeks to really, I'm doing kind of the same thing. I'm really riding that, that high of U.S. championships and, what I accomplished there for the next 2 weeks. Um, so I haven't had a huge opportunity to really think of what's next and what are the next goals. But I can tell you for sure that, uh, I mean, I think a huge goal for me, I want to break 9. Um, and whether that's possible for me at Tokyo or the following year, I don't know yet. But I think it's a good goal to have, and I think that if I keep my head straight on that goal, that it's going to take me to some things, and it's going to help me achieve some goals that I didn't think I could achieve. Uh, I think just talking like logistics, I'd like to make the final, and after I make the final, it's game on after that. Uh, the semifinal is something that kind of always I really lock in for that semifinal just because you never know what's going to happen. And then the final's kind of the fun part for me. So I think just kind of keeping my head on straight and qualifying for that final. Once I make that, uh, I think I'm just gonna
Game
be
on.
able to, yeah, game on and be able to just kind of do what I do. So I think that's the fun part of it, and that's kind of like a little bit of my goals right now. Like I said, I haven't even really been able to sit down and process it yet, but for the most part, I would say that's kind of what I'm leaning towards right now.
Angelina, final serious question for you. What's the takeaway message that you want to leave with the audience today? Floor is yours. What's the final words you want to people walking away with out of this podcast?
Yeah, I feel like that's a good question because there's so much. But I think to like sum it up, uh, is to just like prioritize yourself and, um, as I said before, just d- don't be comparing yourself to others and don't let other people get in your head. I think that's the biggest thing is, um, I think it's important to stay focused on yourself, uh, and to use those around you, obviously, to uh, boost your confidence and, you know, help keep you on the right path. But ultimately, yeah, you definitely need to be prioritizing uh, your time and making sure that what you're doing is right for you and not right for anybody else. I think the last thing I'll say is again, surround yourself with the right people. If you surrounding yourself with the wrong people can truly make or break somebody. And I'm really fortunate with the girls on my team, my coaches, um, my boyfriend, my best friend from home, my brothers, my mom, my dad. All of those people have really, really had my back and been very, very supportive. So, surrounding yourself with the right people, and I think that's going to be huge to keep your mentality on straight, and ultimately if you're mentally there, you're physically there, and vice versa. If you're physically there, you're mentally there. So they work hand in hand, and I think if you can control the controllables, which to me is surrounding yourself with the right people, uh, do that to the best of your abilities, and I think you'll see the most benefit of that.
Angelina, final question for you. The question I ask every guest on every single podcast. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what are you
Oh,
personally choosing to make for him?
you know, this is a good question because I recently was watching Hell's Kitchen. So, um,
Perfect timing.
yes, if I had Gordon Ramsay, honestly, I feel like I feel like this is like a classic, but like I just feel like a really good steak, honestly. Like steak and like a good like a good like salad mixture, like a kale salad or like a summer salad, and then like crispy potatoes
Mm,
and I don't know, like something like
I'm
that.
hungry now, so
Like
I mean, I think
yeah,
we're
I
both.
know. Like I feel like that's good. Like something cheesy too. Um, I'm also extremely obsessed with cottage cheese, so like I feel like if you put cottage cheese on that, I'll just eat it. And Gordon Ramsay can like make anything, so he could definitely make something with cottage cheese, I feel.
I love it. I love it. Angelina,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time today, specifically while at team camp. Appreciate you making the time so soon after the race of your life, the race of your career. Congratulations. So cool to hear about the ins and outs of it. And so excited to watch you represent best country in the world next month on the big stage in
Yes.
Tokyo.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.